We're going to be looking at polynomial division, which is from section 8.3.1. So to clarify what this section is about, there's two main topics. One of them is how to divide polynomials, and the other one is given one root of a polynomial, you need to be able to find the other roots. So the book actually only covers the area model, which is one method of dividing. But I'm going to show you two other ways because some of you might find the other ways easier. So the first thing that we're going to look at is just kind of going back to Algebra 1 when we multiply polynomials using the box method or an area model. So if we were to do this, we would multiply x times 2x squared, which would be 2x cubed. Then we would do 2x squared times 2, which would be 4x squared. We would do x times negative 5x, which is negative 5x squared. Negative 5x times 2, which is negative 10x. 1 times x, which is x, and 1 times 2, which is 2. Now, to get the answer, we would combine like terms. So the first one stays the same. And then from there, we have 4x squared minus 5x squared, which is negative x squared. Negative 10x plus x, which is negative 9x. And then we just have 2. So kind of looking at how I'm going from the problem to the answer, we can see a couple different important things that will help us with dividing. One of which is this first box is going to always be the same as the first term. And this last box will be the same as that last term as long as there's not a remainder. And the other thing that we can see is on the diagonals, they combine to be these terms, okay? So we're going to go ahead and use the area model first. So we have 6x cubed plus 7x squared minus 16x plus 10 divided by 2x plus 5. So what we're essentially doing is 2x plus 5 times what will give us that. So we're going to do like a reverse box. So we're going to use the box method. And when you're deciding what size, so obviously we know it's going to be a 2 by something because we have 2x plus 5. Now we don't know what we're multiplying 2x plus 5 be in order to get our answer of 6x cubed plus 7x squared minus 16x plus 10. But we do know that it's going to be 3 terms. So one little trick that you can use is because the answer is a third degree polynomial, you're going to make it 3 columns, and that will always work. So I know the answer and I know one side. What we're trying to do is figure out the top. But looking back to this last problem, we know that that first box is going to be the exact same as the first term. So I already know that this is 6x cubed. I already know that. So then we can fill in the rest. 2x times what would give us 6x cubed? That would be 3x squared. Then you can do 3x squared times 5, which is 15x squared. But I know the squared term is 7x squared. So what could I combine 15x squared with to get 7x squared? Well, we would have to subtract 8x squared. So then 2x times what would give me negative 8x squared? That would have to be negative 4x. And then you can do negative 4x times 5, which is negative 20x. But I know the x term is negative 16x. So that means that when I combine them, this would have to be a 4x. Or sorry, a 4x. Yeah, that's right. So then 2x times 2 is 4x. And then 2 times 5 is 10. And you can check by making sure all of the inside of the box adds up to the answer. So that means the answer is 3x squared minus 4x plus 2, which means when you take 2x plus 5 and you multiply 3x squared minus 4x plus 2, you get that 6x cubed plus 7x squared minus 16x plus 10. Okay, let's go ahead and try another one. So once again, we have a polynomial divided by a polynomial. So I am going to go ahead and make a 2, and then because it's a third degree, I'm going to do a 2 by 3 box. If that were 6x to the fourth, I would do a 2 by 4 box. So this is going to be 3x plus 1. We don't know what that top row is, but we know that the answer is 6x cubed plus 11x squared minus 12x minus 1. So we already know that this has to be 6x cubed. So 3x times 2x squared would give us that. So then you do 2x squared times 1, which is 2x squared. But we know the x squared term has to be 11. So 2x squared plus 9x squared would give me that. So then 3x times what is 9x squared? That would be 3x. 3x times 1 is 3x. And we know that it has to be negative 12x. So 3x plus what would give us negative 12x? That would be negative 15x. So then 3x times negative 5 would give me negative 15x. And negative 5 times 1 would be negative 5. So then you want to double check. So I see 6x cubed, 2x squared, 9x squared is 11x squared. 3x minus 15x is negative 12x. But we have a problem. Negative 5 is not negative 1. So what this means is 3x plus 1 is not a factor. So it does not go in evenly, which means that we'll just have a remainder. So to get your remainder, you look at how do I get from negative 5 to negative 1? Well, we simply add 4. So that means our remainder is 4. So to write your answer, what you would say, your answer would be 2x squared plus 3x minus 5, and then you would write plus 4 over what you divided by, because 4 is the remainder. Okay, next one is long division. So this will probably be everyone's least favorite, but if you are really comfortable with long division, you might like this. I did want to expose you to it. You do not need to know it, but your honors pre-calc teacher might want you to know it, so I would just make sure you watch through. So I already set it up. X minus 4 goes into this long polynomial. So hopefully you remember how long division works. But the first step is to say x times what will give us 2x to the fourth, and that would be 2x cubed. So then you multiply 2x cubed times x, which would give me 2x to the fourth, which is what we want. And then you're going to do 2x cubed times negative 4, which would give me negative 8x cubed. And then remember, you subtract. So that term cancels out, which is what you want. Then you have negative 11x cubed minus a negative 8, which would be negative 3x cubed. And then you bring down the next term. So now we say x times what will give us negative 3x cubed? It would have to be negative 3x squared. So you do negative 3x squared times x, which would be negative 3x cubed. You do negative 3x squared times negative 4, which would be positive 12x squared. And then again, you subtract, so that term cancels out. 10x squared minus 12x squared would be negative 2x squared. And then you bring down that positive 12x. And then you do x times what would give us negative 2x squared? That would be negative 2x. Multiply negative 2x times x, we get negative 2x squared. Multiply negative 2x times negative 4, you get positive 8x. And then once again, we subtract. That term cancels. 12x minus 8x is 4x, and you bring down that last 16, negative 16. So x times what is 4x? That would be 4. 4 times x is 4x. 4 times negative 4 is negative 16. You subtract and you get 0, which means that x minus 4 is a factor. It goes in evenly, and we don't need to write the remainder. So we would just write our final answer as 2x cubed minus 3x squared minus 2x plus 4. Okay, The next one is synthetic division, which is my favorite just because it's very quick. The first time you do it, it can look confusing, but once you get it, it's very simple. So an important thing about synthetic division is that it can only be used when you're dividing by a linear binomial. So that means you could not divide by something like x squared minus 5, because that would be a quadratic, and then it has to be two terms. So when you set it up, the first thing is you want to look at the coefficients of the polynomial x to the fourth minus 6x cubed plus 18x minus 4, and you're going to write them a little bit spread out. So the coefficient of x to the fourth would be 1. The coefficient of negative 6x cubed would be negative 6. But as we're looking at this polynomial, we can see that it's actually missing a term. So if you're missing any of the terms, if you start with a 4, then you must have a 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. And so because we're missing the squared term, we're going to put a 0. And then I write 18 and negative 4. So you will always do that. So if you're missing the x to the first term, you would put a 0 for it. The next thing you do is you look at the x minus 2 and you just solve for it. So you're just getting like what the x-intercept would be, for example. So that would be 2, and what that is going to do, that's going to be your multiplier. Okay, and I'm going to set it up like this. I know it's kind of weird. So once you start, you bring down the first term, which is 1. Then you multiply. 2 times 1 is 2. Negative 6 plus 2 is negative 4. Then you multiply. 2 times negative 4 is negative 8. And then you add. 0 plus negative 8 is negative 8. 2 times negative 8 is negative 16. You add. 18 plus negative 16 is 2. 2 times 2 is 4. And you add. Negative 4 plus 4 is 0. So what that means is this has a remainder of 0. So your last number that you get is your remainder. So because it goes in evenly, that means that x minus 2 is a factor of that polynomial. Now, so to write your answer for this, what you do is you look at the last term, which is a 2. That's going to be your constant, and then you go up from there. So if that's your constant, then we would have an x squared, and an x cubed, which means that this would be 1x cubed minus 4x squared minus 8x, and your constant would be 2. So again, the area model is the one that CPM really likes to use, but there are other options like long division or synthetic division. Okay, so here is another important part of this chapter or section. So given one root, find the remaining roots. So if x plus 7 is a factor of x cubed plus 5x squared minus 16x minus 14, we want to find the other factor or factors. So what that really means is we already know that it's a factor, so that means x plus 7 times that other factor has to equal that polynomial. So in order to get that, we could do x cubed plus 5x squared minus 16x minus 14 divided by x plus 7, and that would give us the other factor. So I'm going to go ahead and use the area model. So to set it up, we would have our box. We know it's a 2 by 3 because the x plus 7 is 2 terms. And then because it's a third degree answer, we make 3. So we know that it's going to end up being x cubed plus 5x squared minus 16x minus 14, but we need to find that top part. So we already know that this box has to be x cubed. So x times what is x cubed? That would be x squared. X squared times 7 is 7x squared. We know that it has to be 5x squared, so this must be negative 2x squared. So x times negative 2x would give us negative 2x squared. Negative 2x times 7 would give us negative 14x. But we know the answer is negative 16x, so this must be a negative 2x. X times negative 2 is negative 2x, and negative 2 times 7 is negative 14, which matches up. So that means that the other factor would be x squared minus 2x minus 2. So if I took x plus 7 and I multiplied it by x squared minus 2x minus 2, I would get that x cubed plus 5x squared minus 16x minus 14. But if I ask you now to find the roots, well, that's pretty easy. You just set them equal to 0. So x plus 7 equals 0. That would mean that this is negative 7. And remember, roots is just another way of saying x-intercepts. Then I would do the same thing here, but I could already tell by looking at this is not going to factor. So I'm going to use the quadratic formula. So I have my negative b plus or minus the square root, b squared minus 4ac all over 2 times a. So we have 2 plus or minus, this is going to become 4 plus 8, which is root 12 over 2. And then we can simplify that root 12 to become 2 root 3. And then we can simplify all those 2's to become 1 plus or minus root 3. So what this allows you to do is if you have one factor, you can then find all of the other factors. All right, that is a long, lengthy section, but we are finished.